I'm going to go ahead and jump in. All right, well, good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Cameron Fry. I'm the accounting manager here at Mercy, and I've been part of the team since November of 23, so going on 14 months here. Before I forget, I brought some donuts and placed them in the break room. Figured it would be a nice compliment to the deep fry you're about to receive. Not sorry for the cheese there, but couldn't help it. The last time I shared a Devo was back on June 17th of 2024. A lot of new faces since then. That morning I talked about the beauty of finding God in our suffering, especially in the moment, not just in the rearview mirror, and the joy of inviting God into our brokenness. I shared some testimony then and some life lessons learned during my 393 days in the NICU back in 21-22, when my micro-preemie daughter, Jubilee, fought valiantly for her life before passing away in my arms. By request, I saved those notes to the support thread. So if any of you newbies want to go back and actually read those notes, they have been archived. You have to go back a little bit, but they're there. But for today, even though I was like, do I do a part 2 to that? I really want to go in a different direction and share something entirely different. And this is going to be inspired by fourth quarter quiet times, the new year we're in, and a recent sermon I heard a few Sundays ago. So last December, I was taking inventory of my New Year's goals and resolutions. Anyone here do that in December? When the following revelation occurred to me: why is it we're more comfortable being for Christ than in Christ? Why does the thought of being in Christ intimidate us? For us in this room, we trust God and His Word as irrefutable truth, our belief a banner we wave and a root system that anchors our thoughts and behaviors. Like many Christians, we can wrap our minds around Christ and us by way of salvation and sanctification. Yet even though we know God is infinitely greater, even though we can generally comprehend the life He facilitates, we sometimes struggle to grasp our lives in Him 24/7, 365, and accordingly struggle to scale the challenges in front of us. Often we settle into rhythms, patterns, and mindsets where faith exists at their core, but still I can't help but wonder how they would change if we saw the abiding in Christ potential in them. As to how we connect the dots, I submit we consider not only what does it mean to be in Christ, but how do we let our in Christ be at work? First, we must discern what it means to be in Christ. To be in Christ means we're unified with Him personally and corporately. In Galatians, Paul talks about our new in Christ identity by way of putting our hope and faith in Him. For many, we hear the phrase during baptisms and communions when we identify with Christ in the likeness of His death and resurrection. Where the cross is power, there we can abide in Christ as we walk in the newness of life. That's Romans 6:4-5, which define one way is resurrection applied to every thought, every pattern, every belief, decision, temptation, all facets and modes of life. While newness of life can seem like a lofty phrase, one can translate that to the surface through basic affirmations, saying yes to I am loved by God, yes to the cross and Jesus purchasing us at a price, yes to leaving our sinful past behind, to it is finished. When we accept Jesus into our hearts, we embrace a new identity as children reconciled to God and are part of one body, the family of God, in which we abide from victory, not for it. In Christ, we find deliverance and healing, victory in life, goodness and godliness. Colossians 3:3 says, we have died and our lives are hidden with Christ, which to me is notable because that is how the story is word after spiritually ingesting it. Effectively, to be in Christ means God sees the righteousness of His Son operating in and through us. But how do we exactly walk in this? For starters, we must position ourselves to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. While many recognize this opportunity as a gift of accepting Christ's sacrifice as payment for our rap sheets, unfortunately not all believers allow their minds to be renewed as spiritual walks become stagnant, fatigue, they become compartmentalized. Sometimes the hindrance is due to offenses that have matured to doubts, fears, bitterness, resentments. When we tolerate these love-forsaken realities, our spiritual accounting becomes off balance, where the cost of following Christ becomes almost equal to not following Him. Hence why many grow weary over time. We become like vehicles wanting to hit the road, yet are too scared about the fluids required to get there. Eventually, we stomach enough to reset and ramp onto new pathways, but with limited containers of health. This leads me to another critical point. When we take stock of our walk every new year, we must understand reset and renew are not the same. With a reset, you take your plate to God, where grace is received through humility and rest is received by the surrendering of your will in the moment. But to be transformed by the renewing of your mind, one must be daily dying in the context of vertical intimacy. Take it from me, one who's failed in this time and time again. It doesn't make sense to reset your walk and by proxy your vocational and spiritual trajectory if you don't intend to renew your mind, respond to conviction, and invite God into your brokenness. Again, the obstacles are many, but with them comes a challenge we must relish in our aims to be equipped and effective. From knowledge base to spiritual growth, in our desire to experience greater wholeness, we must open ourselves up to be healed in our emotions. Based on the purpose pillars of mercy, we should all be unified here. How we tend our broken hearts corporately cannot be swept under the carpet of mission in the call we have to lay groundwork for holy repair in our residence. In the context of heaven meets earth, we may genuinely desire effectiveness. However, if we're not acknowledging God in all our ways, if we're not grasping our love by God in Christ's identity, the authenticity of our influence will be capped. So my hope for us this year is at least twofold. Number one, that we release any inhibitions in fully surrendering our lives to God. And number two, that we give God more room to invade our space in all areas of life. Where's Brittany at? That more room devo from last year still resonates with me. Not just at church on Sundays in our quiet times, but in our offices, the phone lines, conversations, yes, even the secret thoughts we have about each other. For if we're not committed to being in Christ, then our pride, anger, fear, self-centeredness will remain relevant, hinder our transformation, and prevent our minds from being renewed as God intended. I'm going to let my dad, Pastor Steve Fry at the Gate Church, lead us in the next 3 minutes. All right, so practical example I felt was relevant to this message, and that.
Beloved brothers and sisters, sitting on.
Well, yeah, that's not. Anyway, in summary, to be in Christ is more than being content under the shadow of his wings, more than being grateful on account of sovereignty and grace, even more than our own redemption. To be in Christ is to be so united to Jesus by faith, so in awe of the cross and the ministry of reconciliation that our dependence detaches from anything that could make it conditional, and the transformation by the renewal of our minds becomes an overflow of discovering God as he pursues us. So may our in Christ be at work. May our in Christ be at work, always and forever, even as we heal, even as we're desperate, on and off the clock. Selah.